Welcome, everyone, to the Daniel Krug and Associates Wealth Management Review for May 2024. Today's presentation is titled Benefits of a Roth Conversion. My name is Rocky Istvan. I'm the Chief Compliance Officer and Associate Wealth Manager at Daniel Krug and Associates. Daniel M. Krug, CEO and Senior Wealth Manager, will be joining me for today's presentation.
Okay, we're going to mix this up a little bit, I think, Rocky. We can actually do a little bit of a market recap, which you'll do.
Yep, I'll do a few minutes on that.
Yeah, then I'll do a little bit on advanced planning concepts. So why don't we just get started?
Sounds good to me. Let's move forward. So let's talk a little bit about where the market is year to date. When we look at this chart, you can see that the S&P 500 is actually up about 10% year to date. But the interesting thing is that with everything going on and the problems we've had in the bond market for the last couple years that have really taken blended portfolios down, is the bond market is still showing about a 3% loss year to date. So if you have a blended portfolio, it's really kind of being a drag on that portfolio. Now, we believe this will change when interest rates start to come down. We'll see those bond values start to go up and start to perform like they used to. But they're still showing a little bit of a negative trend right now year to date. When we look at the sectors, the components that make up the index, you can see here that technology, I want you to understand how to read this. Technology represents about 27.11% of the total value of the index. And that 27% is up 11.28% year to date. So technology is the largest sector in the index. And you can go down the list. Financial services represents almost 15% of the index. It's up 8%. Healthcare represents 11% of the index. It's up 4.5%. The rest of it, you can start seeing there's smaller portions of it. But frankly, what this is telling us when we look at the sectors is the market is having a broader impact. It's a broader increase in the market. It's not just technology like what happened in 2023. So that's a good sign. When we look at the economic indicators, we track these things every month. You can see currently that the May economic indicators, we've got 7 that are green, and then we have some yellow and red. How these are red is that the green means it's moving in a positive trend and it's actually improving the economy. If it's yellow, it's kind of in between. It's not necessarily good or bad. The trend is neutral. Red means the trend is bad. And obviously you can see that geopolitical risk, we know what's going on in the world, is bad, but so is equity market valuations. Because we've had this run up this year, Dan, in 2024, equity valuations are relatively high in relationship to expected earnings for the year. But we think this will be corrected down the road here. I like to also point out the chart on the right shows where we were at just back in January, what things looked like. There was nothing green. So you can see actually from an economic standpoint, the market or the economy is looking better as we have gone into this year. So those are very positive signs. If the economy is looking good, the markets are going to also be looking good. One of the sections, if you noticed on the previous slide that turned green, was consumer sentiment. Consumer sentiment is the section I just want to take a minute to talk about here. And this University of Michigan study that everybody follows, this is the index for how consumers feel about the economy. You can see that we actually hit an all-time low back in June of 2022. And everybody remembers that that was not a good year. The markets were down 20%. But from that point, people are feeling better and better about the economy moving forward. So they have it's getting back to that dotted line, which is an average feeling that the economy is doing well. One of the things that's driving consumer sentiment is the fact that household assets versus household liabilities have actually created a bigger divide between the two. People's net worth is actually going up at the same time that their liability or their assets are going up at the same time that their liabilities are remaining relatively flat. So that's actual real wealth generation. So that's great to see. That's a positive for the economy and the markets. Another thing that's really got people feeling good about the economy is look at what happened to food prices at home. That dotted line represents the peak. And again, we were at a peak in 2022. Since then, food prices and inflation have been coming down on food prices. So that makes people feel better to know that the prices are stabilizing in a more normal range. Another positive and why people feel good about the economy is gasoline prices. You go back to April when I believe the invasion of Russia broke out in February, and gas prices spiked because nobody knew what was going to happen to the worldwide supply of gasoline. But since then, we've been on a definite downward trend and in a very normalized price per gallon range right now. So consumers, again, are feeling good about that. This one is kind of a double-edged sword, relative home cost. The cost of home ownership and the value of your homes has gone up significantly above the average, where that could be a negative for people that are trying to buy a home. But when you're looking at wealth creation, if the value of your home has gone up, obviously your net worth is increased and your wealth is increased because your home value is up. So that's another positive. And finally, what we want to talk about is spending. And this yellow line actually represents consumer spending and how it's been growing over time. The blue background mountain chart is basically personal income. And what you can see, what this is showing us is that spending is actually outpacing income, which can be a negative because where's that money coming from that people are spending if they're not making as much to keep up with their spending? It's seen in this slide, personal savings. What happened back during COVID? The government pumped a lot of money into the system. People were given checks to go spend money and stuff like that. Many didn't need it, so they saved it. They wanted to see what's going to happen in the future. Everybody is concerned, so people were in a saving mode. And that's what this chart is showing by the big spike in 2020, but that also has come down. So the reason the consumer can spend more than they're making right now is because they've literally taken it from savings. So when you add all this up, what basically we're saying with the economy at this point of the year is that overall it is slowing. However, the leading economic indicators, which point to the next 6 to 12 months, are improving. That's showing an improving economy. So we believe that's all going to bode well for the stock market.
Well, and it keeps going up. I mean, we did have a little bit of a dip really last month in the market.
Yeah.
We'll see how that kind of plays out as it's running up a little bit here now. Interesting thing. Let's talk about tax mitigation concepts. And we're going to go directly to Roth conversions right now. And the question always is, does converting really make sense for me? Well, let's take a look at some of the benefits of a Roth conversion. First, you're basically stacking the deck in your favor from a tax standpoint. In other words, if you do a Roth conversion and if tax rates rise, you benefit. If they stay the same, you're really not losing anything, and I'll kind of illustrate that in a couple scenarios here. Next, you've got control of your income level, basically controls your income tax. And what I'm talking about here is use tax-free Roth funds instead of taxable IRA funds to keep your income lower. Next, you've got invest more efficiently for tax-free growth. What do I mean by that? Well, let's assume you've got a 7% target rate of return. Now, you can invest all your money the same way. In other words, IRAs, non-qualified accounts, and Roths, you can make them all a 7% target, or you could do it a little bit more efficiently by doing what we call asset location investing, whereby you might make your IRA more conservative. Let's say it's a 5% rate of return. Your non-qualified money, maybe that's a 7% target. And your Roth money, the money that's tax-free, the money that's going to be the most value for you, would be, let's say, an 8 or 9%. You're still targeting that average 7% rate of return, but you end up with a lot more net effective gains in your account. So that's a big one. Another key advantage of having less IRA money is lower RMDs. Now, I don't know how many clients I've had say to me, Rocky, you know what, I don't even need my RMD. I hate to be forced to take it and create a tax. You can actually structure your accounts much more efficiently if you have Roth money in there and you've lowered the amount of IRA money that you have, which again, lowers the RMD. This one's a big one, Rock. I think there might be some advisors out there that really don't push Roth conversions because of this reason. And that is, why are we paying Uncle Sam's advisor fees on our accounts? Again, what do I mean by that? Well, if you have an IRA, part of that money is the IRS and part of the money is yours. If you try to take it all and not pay Uncle Sam, you might end up in the hoosegow. We all know that part of the money from a tax standpoint goes to the IRS. And what we're talking about here is if we reduce the fees on your IRA accounts by removing the tax paid to the IRS, when we do the conversions, you end up paying less fees. So those are 5 key areas of benefit for actually doing Roth conversions. I'm gonna hit something here. It's a bit of a fun fact. Here's a question. Which U.S. president enacted the federal income tax system? Now, you might all be surprised here, but it was done on August 5th, 1961 by President Lincoln. And he did it because, quite frankly, the Civil War was costing so much he had to fund it. So Congress agreed to actually impose a 3% tax on annual incomes over $800. Now, at that point, that was an awful lot of money. And here's another interesting thing. Many people think that, well, Republicans actually are for lowering taxes. And the sad truth is the Republicans actually started this whole tax issue for us. Let's go ahead and move on. We're going to look at tax mitigation concepts. So the first scenario is really tax rates stay level. Tom has an IRA. He wonders if it makes sense to do a Roth conversion. Tom's at a 25% tax bracket. His projected growth rate on the account is 7%. So let's see how this plays out over a 10-year period. So he invests $100,000. For 10 years, he makes 7%, and that grows to $196,000, almost $197,000. Now, we have to take tax off that, so he's in the 25% bracket. We're going to take off about $49,000, and his net rate of return after tax is $147,000. Let's see how that compares to doing a Roth conversion, because many people think, well, my account's going to grow faster if I don't take the taxes out. So let's look at doing a Roth conversion. We have the same $100,000, the same tax at 25%. They take $25,000 out. The new balance is $75,000. Now we're going to grow that over 10 years at 7%. And look, the after-tax value is $147,000. So let's compare the two, not doing a Roth and taking the tax in 10 years, or doing a Roth and taking it in the beginning. As you can see, there's no change in the tax environment. In other words, it stayed at 25% the entire 10 years, but the after-tax value for both of them are virtually the same. So now let's take a look at scenario 2 here, which is rising future taxes. In this scenario, everything's the same except the tax rate goes up over the 10 years to 35%. So we start out at 25, it grows to 35, and the tax, when we take it out 10 years later on the IRA, net rate of return on this is actually $127,865. Now look at the Roth conversion again in a rising tax environment. So in this case, again, we're going to start with 100,000. Taxes are 25%. We're going to take those now. The new balance is 75,000. At 10 years at 7%, the after-tax value is 147,000. So when you compare the two, it's not the same anymore. In other words, it's like we said in that first slide where we talked about the benefits, stacking the deck in your own favor. In this case, if taxes stay the same, you don't get hurt. But if taxes do go up, which we are now at a $32 trillion debt, and no one that I ever talked to says the taxes are going to stay down as low as they are now. So in this environment coming down the road, doing a Roth conversion early can make a big difference for you. So we're going to actually look at different concepts, and on the next webinar we're going to do another scenario to show you, to kind of illustrate how doing Roth conversions actually can enhance your net rate of return. So
Good
that's
stuff.
Yeah, it is good stuff. And it's interesting. I think sometimes we just need to be reminded, get the numbers in there so we can really see what the math says. And if you take our emotions out of some of these decisions and we just look at what the math says to do, if the math works, you do it. If the math doesn't work, you don't do it. And that's really kind of the bottom line.
Yeah. And there are other benefits too outside of that. If you're trying to leave money to family, what do you think they'd rather inherit? Roth or something that they're going to have to get taxed on? And if they're still working, you have to take it out in those first 10 years.
That's
so it
true.
gets added to their income. So
Right.
that's a whole different scenario.
Well, and we're going to go through other concepts as we move forward, because there are many scenarios that are actually happening with our clients that if we had not done Roth conversions, they might be in a tough spot right now. So we'll kind of go through this as we go along throughout the year, and we'll just hit different concepts, shake it up a little bit. If you want to see any of the videos that we have, you can go to Daniel Krug and Associates YouTube, and we've got a variety of different videos there, long and short, for you to peruse through. And, you know, Rocky, we're going to have a great day today, and I think we're going to have a great month. You guys take care of yourself. We'll take care of you. You don't have to worry. We're ready for 2024 and beyond.
Everybody have a great day.